All right, y'all, we are going to do something so fun. Jesse is back with me on the God's Vibes podcast. So if you guys did not listen to our last episode on the prophetic, go back and give it a listen. We talked about what in the world is the prophetic. So if you've not heard about the prophetic, if you've also experienced prophetic in a way that has not been pleasing, that might be a great episode to go listen to. But what we thought we would do, we've heard a lot of people in our different realms, and we've experienced this too, saying literally the word overwhelm, right? The world, period, is just an overwhelming place to be. And if we're not careful, if we're not using our spiritual tools, and the prophetic really is a spiritual tool, if we're not using our tools, then we too will be overwhelmed. And that's exactly where the enemy wants us. He wants us overwhelmed. He wants us caught up in all sorts of stuff. He wants us not moving powerfully forward and showing up fully in our lives. Not gonna work. So, what we thought we would do is super fun. And if you guys actually watch on YouTube, you can see a graphic of this. We're going to talk about a powerful tool so you can clear the noise and break through the weight of overwhelm and really embrace your season and enjoy it. So, if that sounds good to you, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you also subscribe to the Juliana Page YouTube channel. We're going to dive into this. And also know we're going to do prophetic ministry time at the upcoming Pivoting on Purpose virtual retreat. It is virtual, which is a benefit because you can join it from no matter where you are. Okay. So if you want to experience real-time prophetic ministry and just get loved on, join us at that retreat. All the details are in the show notes below. So, Jesse, maybe start by like breaking the ice. We're going to talk about seasons and identifying the season that you're in. So do you want to share what season you believe that you're in and why this is powerful in general?
Yeah, I would believe right now I'm actually coming in transition from a winter season to a spring season. I have actually gone through a huge health transformation. I've been chronically ill for almost 8 years and going through that walk with the Lord, but also through with doctors and then encounters with the Lord and just having Him restore my soul, my spirit, and my body. And so right now I'm in that transition between winter and spring.
Very cool. And what might be fun too for those that are just listening on the podcast, what are the seasons? Why do I identify them as this? And what happens in each one?
Well, we know from Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8, that there's a time and a season for everything underneath the sun. Honestly, God has created us for seasons, and there's an appointed time even within those seasons. And so when we're looking at seasons, we're looking at times of period where God is doing new things in our life. Whether he's bringing restoration, whether he's bringing pruning, whether he is bringing fast growth, or even storing up resources for us. And so we can see even just in the natural, right, where we farmers who are planting crops, very much our lives can mimic what's in creation. And so with times and seasons, we can actually gain more clarification of where we are and how to thrive in these specific situations that we find ourselves in life. So that's a little bit about that as far as seasons.
I love, and I think this is so good for anybody that feels we call it in the Courage Co future tripping. So if anybody has like high functioning anxiety where you just got
Right.
this great gift that just feels like a curse of looking at the future without God in it and coming up with all the worst case scenarios that just makes you overdrive, right? It just throws you into overdrive and anxiety. This is a great tool because it really helps you see, okay, like there's purpose where I am. Like I don't have to escape my reality. I can actually embrace my reality. And that's going to give me so much power to transform and to grow,
Right.
to evolve into the good things that God has for me. Because it's not a blessing to be out of season, and it's not a blessing to be running at a pace that you're not graced for. Like all of those things are what truly make life overwhelming, right? Just another way to think about this is when we don't let our yes be yes or our no be no, we say yes to so many things we're actually not supposed to say yes to. Our yes is only, it's holy, like it's only reserved for certain things. And then our no also protects that yes, right? But if we don't have any sort of boundaries around that, then we're overwhelming our lives. And we're doing that. That's nobody else's fault. Like we're doing that, right? So seasons and seeing what season that you're in, and we're actually looking at them as literal seasons in the world, but they could be different things. Like we've seen In the Bible, the Holy Spirit led Jesus into a wilderness season, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't feel like flourishing, but that was a season of preparing. So winter could feel like a wilderness to some people, but it's not reserved only for winter, spring, summer, and fall, although it could be a really helpful tool to identify on a basic level what season.
Right.
Yay. So what you were saying was rest, planning, preparation, getting a new vision, right? Like if God is doing a new thing, he's going to start giving you like the seeds of the new thing that he's doing. So he's going to start giving you glimpses of that, almost like a foreshadowing of coming attractions. He'll just give you little screenshots of it. The renewal, strength, stillness, protection. A lot of times when we're still, we see God fight for us when we're still, right? So that's winter. What happens in the other seasons, just so people can identify them?
Yeah, so in spring seasons, again, I've researched farmers. I mean, I lived in California, so I was surrounded by vineyards and farmland, which was fantastic. But we look at what farmers are doing in these seasons. That's how we've kind of like grabbed this wisdom. So in spring, it can look like fertilization. You're tilling up the ground. You could even be pruning some things in your life. Planting, there's this rebirthing or even fresh start feel to your life. I love that for me personally because I'm like, I've had a winter season for a long time with health specifically, and now starting to see these incredible, like, flourishing moments of, feeling better, restoring health, restoring energy, all these things. And so that spring season can be a place again where you're almost expectant for what God is doing. You're kind of looking around and you're keeping your eyes. I love this passage in Jeremiah 1:11 where God is actually training up his prophet by looking at an almond branch and talking about what it's doing, and what we see can actually reflect what's going on within us internally too. And so with that, that's kind of what spring looks like. Summer looks like a lot of fast growth. We see a lot of, plants springing up during summertime. Um, fast growth. There's a lot of hunger and thirsting. I don't know about you guys, but hot summers in California and in Texas, when you're watering plants, they need a lot of water, right? They're constantly needing that nourishment. And so even in our own lives, if you're in the season where you cannot get enough of the Word of God, if you cannot get enough of what He is doing, you're studying about His holiness or His presence, right? You could be in a summer season. There's a lot of fruitfulness in this season. There's a lot of joy and promises fulfilled. And so that summer really is like almost that beginning of harvest, right? Because you can pull a lot of plants off the vine during summertime. And then fall looks like a lot of storing up. You're kind of reaping what you've sowed, right? There's resources. They're taking inventory of the year. A lot of farmers will look at their fall season and they're taking inventory for what they've done and what they've sown in, and then what the harvest was in that season, as well as just gathering. There's a lot of times, if you guys can see through different seasons, fall is a lot of times we're gathering together, whether it's for the holidays, whether it's for different things that are going on within family and traditions. And so we look at a lot of the things that the Lord is kind of created through creation, Romans 1:20, right? To reveal what's going on so we can partner and then also release, acceleration in these specific seasons, because you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss what he's doing in these specific seasons because it's preparing you for what's to come. And there's always strength and there's always renewal in all these individual seasons as well.
So good. And I think it's so neat to see it like this because then you're on the lookout for how the Lord is moving in your life. So, for example,
Right.
happen to be, let's say that you're in winter. For some people, winter can seem frustrating because you just think of winter in your own life and you're like, meh, it's cold and like things are dead and like, you know what I mean? It's just like, ugh. But that's just one perspective, right? When you look at winter, sometimes winter is some people's most favorite time. It's like you can rest, you can take a beat. You don't have to be like, chasing things down or really activating a whole lot of things. You can actually like pull in a little bit, right? You're going to really focus on your insides at this time, or your consecration with the Lord, what he's revealing to you, listening, receiving from him. And that's not so heavy on the doing, heavy on the pursuing and the achieving. It's different, right? Or you're starting to get excited about the plans that he has for you without the work behind it. He's not saying launch, right? He's just saying, here's where I'm moving. Here's what this can look like. And that's actually exciting to dream it up without having to do anything with the dream yet. You get renewed, like he just gives you fresh strength, right? Those that wait upon the Lord shall be renewed, right? And they can run in a very different way, which is really beautiful. So you start to receive all the nutrients that you need. And then you also can recognize in stillness things that you can't see when you're moving at a different pace. You just pay attention to things that you could otherwise miss, which is really beautiful. And then you see also how you're protected. It breaks off like this need to achieve, right? Like it kind of is
Right.
counterintuitive. We think like we got to do everything, otherwise it's all going to fall apart, right? But when you rest and you see that you're covered and protected, you're like, wow, what if I actually lived from rest on the inside, right?
Right.
From my mind being at rest, from my emotions being stabilized, from my heart not being heavy, but actually being light and being pure, right? I can move different, right? I can spring into something new. So winter is necessary and it can feel like a pullback and it can just be at times frustrating depending on how you perceive it because you don't see the external necessarily a whole lot in winter because there's so much activity happening beneath the surface or you're right on the inside of you. There's so much happening in your soul, in your process, in your character, in your heart, and that actually is everything,
Hmm.
particularly God, because He's always looking at our heart. So I think when you can see that, you're like, oh, I've got permission to rest. I've got permission to just prepare and not to actually deliver on anything right now. I can literally move in step with God and not have FOMO, right? And think that I'm missing anything. I can just embrace what this is, knowing that that's going to set me up well for the next one and the next one. So, if you want to speak to that too, I know it's really cool when you're doing so much as a leader, doing so much as a mom, doing so much as a wife, right? It's like, how do I manage seasons with all of that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I love it because it keeps us steady. Like, I mean, being in a winter season for health, it did affect the other seasons of my life, right? It affected me as a mother, as a leader, as a wife. And so knowing that gave me permission to kind of settle in and be like, okay, this is what this looks like right now. And of course, I didn't think it was gonna last that long. But I'm so thankful because through it, the Lord was truly renewing me. And so part of what I love about knowing your season is that it removes comparison, right? So even being around these powerful leaders, I'm around all these incredible leaders that are running their race strong. I could look at them and bless them, right? And acknowledge what season they were in, and then also bless myself to acknowledge what season I was in. So it kept me in perfect peace and it kept me also not looking at my brother or sister in envy, right? And I love that because again, like we're here to build the kingdom. We're here to do this together. There's so many diversities within the body of Christ, and we want to be continuing to spur each other on in
Yeah.
the different seasons that we're in. And so as a mom, you know, I had to take that winter season into consideration, right? And how I plan different things, what we did in certain seasons, we didn't do in these seasons. And so um, as a wife and even as someone who's leading and running in ministry as well, that definitely shifted perspective. And I took time to be with the Lord in different ways that even shifting out of winter, I'm recognizing that I probably won't be doing as much because I'll be doing them in a different way. And so, just a practical example of that is like having more downtime. I was in scripture probably more the last 8 years than I've ever been in my whole life because I had more time resting. I had more time communing with the Lord, and there was this consecration piece that happened within that time. Not that I won't have that in the coming seasons, but I'm actually going to be, I feel like it kind of set me up to have that placement in my heart that I'm always retreating back to, right? There's been something that's been built that I continue to go back into that and kind of pull from those resources that I've built with the Lord. And so, but with my children are in all different seasons. Some of us are going, what's going on with our kids? And it's like, oh, well, one of them's in a fall season and one of them's in a spring season and the other's in summer. So we got ones that are just growing and they're hungry and they're going through all these different fast changes and their emotions are changing really quickly. I've got I've got a almost 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So they're all in different seasons. And what that's done for me as a mother is it's actually shown me how to pray for them differently, how to step in and even prophesy over them differently, to release God's blessing over them uniquely according to what season I kind of see them in. And again, these are great tools, and sometimes they'll be in transition, but it is a beautiful way to partner with the Lord and to be able to remove any of the distraction or chaos that kind of comes with life because we are all in that, right? Um, and so what I have found is that this tool really does help kind of center me back into, okay, where are they at? What do they need? How do I prepare? I mean, I think I was recently sharing with you, Juliana, this last week we had some huge transitions, and I had
Yeah.
one of my kiddos coming in, and they were really, really frustrated about some things, and they were confused about things, and they just needed a good cry. Well, because I know she's in a spring season, she's kind of in this winter slash spring. I was able to kind of sit with her and like to start dreaming with her actually. So I'm like, hey, what about this? Like, what is God saying about this? And she'd be like, okay, I'm kind of I'm in this place where I'm frustrated, confused, but now let's ask God what we're doing. And that expectancy and that hope for what's to come, because she's not quite transitioned from that winter to that spring, actually encouraged her and shifted her entire mood. It shifted her behavior because we were able to sit, have a moment, and like sit and like partner with the Lord with what He was doing with her in this specific season of her life.
So good. I think
Yeah, it was fun.
like I'm thinking I had received part of a prophetic word was you're going to be in a season. It's similar to like the Amos 9, right? Where it's like things are going to be happening so fast, right? Like your head will swim, I believe is how it actually defines it. But in that times, like people pray for that kind of blessing, right? But it's you got to actually know that the seasons that preceded that are going to be really important because you're going to have to rely on what happened in the rest. You're going to have to rely on the relationship that you've cultivated with the Lord to make a quick decision that is
Absolutely.
actually rooted in wisdom. You're not going to have that maybe the same amount of time to just pull away and pray that you might have been a winter season, right? But you are going to need to pull from that winter season to make a decision because you know God's heart and you know his will, right? So it's really important that we're seeing how these all work together and then how it changes how you lead and how you love. So if you know I don't know, if you lead teams or if you're, over an organization or if you have a business, right? When you can see where your leaders are and even have discussions about what season they're in so they can have rest in that, they can have peace in that, then you can also draw forth the goal of that season, highlight what that is for them, and also stretch them a little bit into where they're going, but also honor where they are and spur them on in that season, celebrate where they are because we need people in every season too, right? So it's like when you're running, it's so refreshing when you have somebody that's in rest to remind you of like, you can rest while you're running. Do you know what I mean? Like a spastic runner is very different than a restful runner, right? Like, so it's helpful when people can bring what they're experiencing in every season. You can appreciate the color, the diversity of all of that. And so I think when you can see it, you can live from the perfect peace. You can live from contentment, right? And the word says godliness with contentment is always great gain. And you can truly have that in every season. We're actually designed to be flourishing in every single season. That is the promise. But we got to partner with that promise in order to experience it because we can. I don't think people like this very much when I say it, but we can choose overwhelm, right? Like when you're sitting in an overwhelming moment, I have to be like, you know what? This is a choice. Like you can be overwhelmed or you can choose not to be. You know what I mean? Like you can choose to renew your mind. You can choose to encourage yourself in the Lord. Like you can choose to use some tools that you have. Yes, you can have human moments, right? But it is how you move through them that changes everything. And particularly with the season, you don't want to be in the wrong mindset for a whole season. You don't want to be in the wrong heart posture for a whole season. You don't want to be in the wrong belief system, which is really being reflected in your emotions for a whole season. That could actually get you in trouble, right? So
Right.
you can see, all right, I'm allowed to be human, but I can enjoy every season.
Hmm.
Every season doesn't have to have the air of like, ugh, to it. You can actually look forward to your season and be like, okay, I'm gonna love myself and those that are connected to me well.
Hmm.
by recognizing what it is and knowing what to focus on in these seasons. Like we've given you really great points to focus on. Like if God is doing a new thing in your relationship, it could be a season of spring, right? And that might feel polarizing in a relationship because it's like, oh, we're like pruning stuff off and like we're actually like growing some stuff here, but it's not like fast growth. Do you know what I mean? Like it's still like new things and I'm not quite sure how to nurture that, or we're birthing a new thing and I don't think birth sounds fun. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so spring on the outside sounds amazing, but it can actually feel pretty intense if we're not
Right.
stewarding it well. But if you're like, oh, this is actually normal, like it's okay for dead things to be cut off so more can grow here. It's okay to take some time and like lean in and fertilize this area. Or it's okay, like that this is completely new and you're going through a complete regeneration of what this looks like because God
Mhm.
is doing something. So trust that fresh start. You were praying for years and years and years, and now God is actually answering and giving you a fresh start. Trust the
Right.
fresh start, right? So I think when you can see that, then there's that ease to it. There's that relaxing into the Lord, leaning into the Lord as you're moving through things that are happening in your life. So good.
It is. It is.
What else do you feel like would be helpful to add? We love this, so we can riff on this all day, but we just want to give you like a little teaser that this is a really powerful tool that you can utilize when you feel anxious or overwhelmed in whatever you're experiencing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think part of what knowing your season, it increases the effectiveness of your current season. So I think you've already touched on this, but it's really powerful to like when you know your season, there's effectiveness of truly knowing your boundaries, knowing what you can and can't do. I don't know how many invitations I've got through health that I had to say no to because the truth was is I had to guard my already yes. My season of health and renewal in winter was my yes season because I was partnering with the Lord, right? And there's something beautiful about that because there's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
So trusting where God has you and the season He has you is to benefit you and to strengthen you, and it's to create effectiveness in the current one that you're in. I think it also sets us up for future upgrades, right? So I think you've quoted this scripture a few times, but Isaiah 43:18 through 19 says, forget the former things and do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up, and do you not perceive it?
Yeah.
Right? That new thing is really powerful because it instills hope in us, but it really is setting us up for future upgrades. And so
Yeah.
like for me personally, my husband and I are in a summer season. Like we just tipped our little toes into that. And we went through winter. We've gone through spring. We've done the new things and they've been challenging. But now we're actually rejoicing in the new growth. And we're starting to celebrate 18 years in June. And so we've gone through seasons of marriage, and how sweet to be able to like really enjoy the upgrades because we've let go of former seasons. And I think that that's a huge, probably a pull for a lot of us. Like we'll hold on to certain seasons for a little bit too long. And the Lord is actually inviting us into doing new things so that we can have those upgrades, but you can't hold both. You've got
Yeah.
to be obedient to the Lord and let go of what's old and grab a hold of what's new. And so that's part of the benefit of really knowing your season, and being able to step into that. And especially like with refreshment, you guys, like knowing your season refreshes you. It keeps you in that perfect peace. It keeps you in this place of trust with the Lord, and it restores your soul because as Juliana said, right? We're supposed to flourish in every season. So that restoring of your soul and that refreshment is absolutely beautiful, and really, really, really powerful. It's a powerful tool.
I love it. And I'm thinking too, with all of these beautiful visuals and graphics, right, that we have here, it's all nature. So the word talks about this a lot too, but it's like nature is not struggling and striving. It's not like grow. Do you know what I mean? Like it just grows, right? Like, so like there's something to be said about that when you can just meditate on looking at these images and it's like, okay, it's not striving to flourish. Like it's just what it does. It's actually its nature. It's how God's designed it. And so that's the power of embracing your season or even just when you get out in nature, that's so healing to go on a walk with the Lord, like a prayer walk, and just be in nature and be around that. Like it's just doing what nature does, right? And so it gets you in touch with your design in a really beautiful way. And then you're able to look at your life and say, okay, where am I resisting or where am I striving in a way that's not a good fit for me actually in this season so that I can trust more. Because knowing your season is designed to help you have greater intimacy with the Lord, like you literally see more into him and who he is and who he wants to be for you in the season and what he's literally doing, how he's moving, which anything with the Lord is so subtle, right? And so it takes a lot to perceive, to know, to be drawn to it, to come in proximity, that closeness, that nearness to the Lord. And then as you can start to perceive and know these things, you start to trust the Lord differently. And when you trust the Lord, that's when you take a real rest because you're like, oh, like he's working, or I can actually discern that this is how he's moving. And now I can settle in my soul a little bit. Like I don't have to overthink and overcompensate in my brain because like God's already on it, right? Or like my emotions don't have to be everywhere because I do trust that I'm cared for and I'm being guided and supported, or my heart can actually just rest in the Lord right now because he's holding it. Like I love the scripture. It talks about he holds and maintains my lot. Like he literally has my whole life in his hands. Like, why am I going to trip at the level that I'm tripping about this, right? Like I can just let him hold me for a second and be embraced by the Lord by embracing my season. So I think it's such a powerful tool that we're offering here. And we do this full time. So we teach in the prophetic full time. We have a prophetic basics course, if you will. It is a program. It's designed to be 6 months where you can get introduced to the power of the prophetic and start embracing that as a lifestyle. Like, what would it mean to literally live supernaturally, not just naturally, right? To fine tune your senses so that you're sensitive to the Lord and how he's leading and guiding you. It's basic. So we're going to give you a lot of basics to the best of our ability. We love to go deep. So it's like basic for us. But it's a 6 month training. And then once you go through that, you can apply for advanced training with us as well. So we've got details if you want to join us in the basics. A benefit is you get this prophetic summit that we just did for free in there. So you can actually go through this seasons exercise where we did a deep dive on this. It was called Preparing to Pivot. So you can go through this summit for free and this prophetic basics training in addition to get a whole lot of monthly training and monthly lives with us as well. So that's an opportunity. Want to remind you as well. We've got the Pivoting on Purpose virtual retreat coming up, and there will be prophetic ministry time in that. And you're going to hear from people. I believe there's 7 speakers that are going to share how they have pivoted on purpose in different seasons. So we've got anything from I don't want to pivot to what you do when pivoting is painful, because
Yes.
that's really where we want to resist the pivot. Then we lighten it up a little bit with the wonderful pivot. So how pivoting can actually be full of wonder and actually really fun. Pivoting wisely, how we can really pivot with wisdom. God really wants us to be excellent in how we show up and steward his wisdom well in the earth. Pivoting with grace, like literally, how do you pivot with the Lord? How do you pivot with grace as a person? And then we've also got a really fun one. This is one of our favorites. It's called The Tale of Two Pivots, where we've got two powerful ladies in the Lord who have really desired the same changes in their marriages, with their kids, just with themselves and their lives in general. And they got two totally different outcomes from pivoting on purpose with the Lord and being obedient. So that's going to be so powerful to hear. It's probably going to redefine how you think the Lord works and what success looks like. And then we got hot seat coaching time and prophetic ministry. So if you are not on board for that, I don't know what to tell you other than to register because we're shutting that down on Friday. So it's going to be Friday, February 21st and February 22nd, and you get replays all the way through the 28th. So it's really a no-brainer and it'll bless your life.